She was loved by her job and her clients she cared for. She will be greatly missed by everyone, and especially Irene, me. Because I hope this time you spent in jail helps you sit back, think what you could have done differently. We hope and pray this doesn't happen to any other families out there just trying to live their lives to the fullest. There's a hole that can never be filled, a piece missing. Thank you.
Ms. Reed?
Thank you, Your Honor, for allowing them to speak. Sometimes I feel the victims speaking first gives the court a better idea of how they're feeling. Few points I would like to make. Yes, I've talked to the family, and I only know one of them mentioned that they wanted the maximum 4 years, but that is what the family does want and the friends want. I have talked in detail with them many times about this case. Realistically, Judge, if you sentence him to the maximum under the plea, he'll serve 2 years with his good time, and then I would expect, I think there's a large chance he'll be deported based on this. I would bring up to the court that I know we will see, he'll have his presentation to see whether he is remorseful, but I would bring up that he did initially state to many people that it was a garbage bag full of food that hit his windshield. He told his girlfriend that. He told a couple of people at the dairy that. Then he did go to see the cops and turn himself in, but he didn't give a statement about what occurred. Instead, his car was taken to his girlfriend's mom's house instead of actually turned over to the police without the search warrant. And I think it's important to note that there is absolutely no way that this defendant did not know when someone comes through your windshield, her hair was on the top of the passenger side windshield. Her backpack went through there. Her shoe was in his car. And then she flipped up over the top and flew, so far. I pray that she died instantly. I do feel that from reading the OMI report and from the different things that I've read in the accident reconstruction report, that I would be very surprised if she did not die instantly with all the issues that happened from the autopsy report that I could review. It's always tragic when we have something like this. I will say there were no drugs or alcohol found in his system. We were able to do search warrants on that. They were a little further in time, I believe. I can't remember the exact time it took him to actually turn himself in, but there was no alcohol or drugs in his system. But the fact that he hit somebody and then just drove off and left her there, it does make you question humanity and how someone could do that. Because if it was an accident, all we're really trying to do is render aid and trying to make sure that the police can get there and that paramedics can get there, and if there was a chance to save her life, then maybe that could have happened. So we are asking for the full 4 years. I understand that this is a hard situation for everybody, but we think that's fair in this crime, and that's what we're asking the court to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Ms. Baca?
Yes, Your Honor. I'm going to start out with the letter from Mr. CHAVEZ-MOLINA. It's dated December the 15th. I'm Angelina Baca, and I'm the defense attorney for the public defender, and I represent Mr. CHAVEZ-MOLINA. That is what I'm charged to do, and that's what I'm doing. My deepest condolences to each and every single one of you. I think the biggest argument that you're going to hear from me after I read this letter is that this was an accident down a dark road, 2-lane highway without no shoulder on either side of the road. There is one at the beginning, but at the scene where this happened, those shoulders go away and it just becomes a 2-lane highway with a ditch on either side. It was on Thanksgiving Day, as Mr. Dozier stated, and that is even more insult to injury. My client goes to work at a dairy about 2.5 miles away from the point of impact. And he works nights, he goes on the night shift. So he had been home. And so our theme is this was not intentional. He wasn't out drinking and driving. He wasn't under the influence of any drugs. He was going to work. He had left his family from Thanksgiving and was on his way to work. As you heard, he is an immigrant. He was not born in the United States. There's nobody that's more aware of the laws of this land than him as far as what happens to immigrants if they break the law. And if it was me, and pretty much anybody in this room, if we had ran over somebody in the dark at that rate of speed, we would freak out, full on panic. I mean, I ran over a cat when we're driving down the road at night, and you're going from here to Vaughn, and there's rabbits, millions of them crossing in the springtime. It's a nightmare if you're trying to weave around them. Nobody wants to run over anything, especially a human being. So I've translated this from Spanish to English. I write these few words.
Miss Vaca, I'm sorry. Can I ask, as you address that letter, can you speak towards me into the microphone?
Yes.
I think I'll make a better record. Thank you.
I write these few words with a profound sense of sorrow and remorse from the depths of my heart. The effect of this tragedy upon my life from the day this occurred to the present day are not easy to describe because of the weight upon my mind, my heart, and my soul has been overwhelmingly heavier than anything else I have ever been through. When I think about the absolute shock of what happened on that night, it not only brings me debilitating sorrow for this family and myself, but for Mrs. Dawn Renee Dozier and all the people who love her. The weight of the realization that this horrific accident occurred by my hand and took someone's life is not as it should be, because there is only one who should have the power of giving and taking life. The one who knows every detail of our daily lives, the roads we travel, filled with hopes and dreams, as well as the everyday struggles that come with life. It is God who teaches us to be humble of heart. I take responsibility for my part in this tragedy, and my most fervent wish is that I could only go back and undo this heartbreak. The sentiments of sorrow and pain I carry have no end, and the only thing I can pray for is to ask God and this family for forgiveness, because for me it is an ongoing nightmare, which I will live with until the day that I die. Only God knows the exasperation and pain I feel for this terrible loss of life. I pray for your comfort to her sons and daughters, brothers, sisters, and everyone touched by this tremendous loss. I pray for peace in your hearts through the grace of Almighty God the Father. Fernando CHAVEZ-MOLINA.
Thank you, Ms. Vaca.
As to the argument, Your Honor, The fact is that Mr. Molina was on his way to work. He left his family. He didn't partake of any alcohol. He doesn't drink alcohol. He is a survivor of leukemia, and having undergone chemotherapy and radiation for over a year. He is alive and well here today. He came to this country as an immigrant when he was just barely 20 years old. He is 44 years of age. He has worked in various dairies throughout all this time. That is his job. He works in agriculture. He does have a girlfriend that he lives with and has been with for the past 17 years. Prior to that, he lived single, does not have any children of his own, but has been a father figure to Miss Yolanda's children. On this day, he was on his way to go to work at about 6:48. I think the time was 1948 when the accident occurred. It was the last week of November, and the sun goes down in November with daylight savings time at about 4:45 p.m. So it was well after dark. It was a couple of hours after that. He's on his way to work, down a 2-lane road without no shoulders on either side. His toxicology report came back that night after he turned himself in to the Clovis Police Department. It came back negative for any alcohol or drugs. There was 2 toxicology reports done. One was done on the victim as well. And I'm sure the family knows the results of those as well. I won't go into that. Upon impact, my client confided in me and told me that if he were to testify, he would have told this court that he felt the impact and immediately came to a stop. He got out of the car to see what had happened. He couldn't see. He made a U-turn and turned the headlights right there on the road. And to his shock and demise, he did see a body on the side of the road. And actually, I believe it was, we went out there with an investigator and we traced steps and we looked. He was in complete and utter shock and disbelief and horror. He got in his car, he drove about 2.5 miles, 2 3/4 miles to the Opportunity Dairy, which is just straight down that road going south on that road. And then you run into the dairy pretty much to the right. And he wasn't in his right state of mind. He was shaking. He didn't know what to say. He didn't know what to do. He just felt like my life as I know it is over. But there was no intention. He wasn't speeding according to the report that Mr. Clemens wrote. He was going approximately 50 miles an hour on a 55 mile per hour road. When questioned what happened, there was admissions made. They went out to the car, they took pictures, there's evidence. There was no excuse for leaving, except that he didn't know what to do. As the state stated, and as he realized that this person was deceased when he came upon the body, there was no intent here. This was an awful, tragic accident on a dark road And now we have a loss of life. We have her obituary, and again, our condolences to each and every one of you. We can't bring Miss Dozier back. Miss Reed stated quite accurately that the chances of being deported in the times that we live in are high, and we're asking the court to consider putting him on probation for 5 years, as the statute would require. If the court does not see fit to do that, we would ask that you put him on an ankle bracelet for the 4 years, and he would have to pay the costs of that. I would ask the court to take into consideration that he was sober, that he has never had a criminal charge that came up on his background through the state. He has never committed a crime and been adjudicated of a crime prior to this. He came to America to go to work and make money, and he has stayed in America and never had any issues with the law. He can't make this go away. He is a faithful man. He has called to my office, and if it hasn't been him, it has been his partner that has called to my office once a week, every week since I was assigned to this case. Prior to getting the immigration attorney on board, my advice to him was that the chances of being deported because of this are high. We were facing the 6 years pursuant to the statute. And were it not for the case law that came out November of 2024 that we were made aware of this morning, he was prepared to come and argue and know and face the 6 years. My client hasn't left the country. He hasn't left the state. He doesn't even go to Lubbock because that was also discussed. He's asking for 2 weeks if he's going to be sent to the Department of Corrections so that he can get his affairs in order. He doesn't have a fancy job with a bunch of vacation or medical insurance for when people get stepped on by dairy cows. He's a simple man, and he's just asking the court to have mercy on him because this was not intentional. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Baca. Mr. CHAVEZ-MOLINA, your attorney read a letter that you had prepared. Do you wish to make any further statement here today?
Habla de tu corazón.
Bueno, pues yo lo que quiero decir es de que primeramente pues me siento mal por lo que hice, ¿verdad? Sabemos que todos presentamos cosas aquí en el mundo que que vamos a tener sin esperar. Yo siento el dolor que siente de perder.
Un momento. I would first want to tell you that from the bottom of my heart, I am so sorry. And we all have to deal with things in life that we don't expect.
Yo sé lo que se siente el dolor de perder un ser amado. Yo también perdí a mi madre, ¿verdad? Y pues yo sé que es difícil, pero pues yo también les quiero pedir perdón a todos los familiares que están aquí presentes, que me puedan perdonar.
Un momento, por favor. And I want you to know that I know what it is to lose a loved one. I also have already lost my mother. And I want to apologize to each and every one of you that are here. Adelante.
Que me puedan perdonar porque sabemos que Dios nos perdona a todos, a pesar de nuestros errores que cometemos. Tenemos el perdón de Dios, tenemos...
Un momento.
Ms. Pabletta, you're muted. I'm not hearing you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Your Honor. I want to ask you to forgive me. I know that God paid for all our sins and errors for everyone. Adelante.
Sí, porque me perdonen y pues también ellos, Dios nos perdona a todos, ¿verdad? Y pues para tener paz en nuestros corazones, que busquen de Dios para que yo veo orar por ellos. Dios es el que da la paz en los corazones, que busquen de Él y que Él los fortalezca.
Un momento, por favor. And I ask you to forgive me, and I ask you to look to God. I look to God. I have prayed for you so that you can find peace in your hearts. Adelante.
Que nos fortalezca y que les ponga paz en sus corazones, y pues es todo lo que pues Dios me da a mí, para tener yo también así perdón de Él, ¿verdad? Y tener esa paz que necesito en mi corazón.
I ask that God give you, because He's the one that can give you the strength and the peace in your hearts. And I look to Him also. I look to Him for the peace that I need and the strength that I need.
Ya, pues entonces tú creo que es todo, es todo.
¿Puedo repetir eso? ¿Qué dijo, señor?
No, digo, ya es todo lo que podría decir.
So that is really all. That's all I could say.
Okay, thank you, sir. You may return to your seat. Okay. Ms. Reed, do we have a pre-sentence confinement credit total?
I think he was out like within a day, right?
5 days, Your Honor.
If she says it's 5 days,
I've got the copy of the inmate report. It's right here. Went in on 11/24/23, came out on 11/29/23.
Okay. Okay, well, I have accepted the plea agreement in this case, and I've heard the argument as far as sentencing goes. Anytime a judge is deciding a sentence, he or she is to weigh certain factors. Those factors are retribution, also known as punishment, rehabilitation, and deterrence. In this case, I have been presented really just a horrific incident and trauma to the victim, which has resulted in absolute trauma to the family. And in a situation like this, I weigh the retribution or punishment factor very highly. As far as rehabilitation, I do note that the defendant was sober at the time of the incident. He has no criminal history. He has shown up in court. There are certain factors that have shown me that this defendant is a good candidate to be rehabilitated. Deterrence is a huge factor for this court. Not so much that I want to deter the defendant from future crimes, although of course I do, but members of our community need to understand that this is a serious crime, and that when we are involved in accidents, we stop and we render aid. Because there have been numerous cases like this that are coming through our court, and deterrence is a giant factor for this court. We need to stop, we need to render aid, we need to drive cautiously and carefully. I do want to say before I announce my sentence that I am very sorry for the family's loss. I thank you for sharing your hearts with me today so that I could fully understand that. I do believe that the defendant has remorse in this case, and I thank him for sharing that with you all and with the court today. I will say that I'm very, very grateful to both counsel in this matter for the way that you've handled this case, the way that you've worked on this case, and for what I believe has been a very fair outcome. I will also say that, Ms. Baca, the work you've done to get it to this plea was a lot of benefit to your client, as it could have gone differently had he gone through a trial and been convicted. And so, whatever my sentence is, this was a very good plea that you negotiated on behalf of your client, and I respect Ms. Reed for offering it as well. That being said, having weighed the major factors and having fully considered what I've been presented in court, as to count 1, knowingly leaving the scene of an accident causing death, I am going to sentence the defendant to 3 years in the Department of Corrections. As to count 2, attempted tampering with evidence, a misdemeanor, I am going to sentence the defendant to 364 days in the Department of Corrections. Those sentences will run consecutive for a total of 4 years minus 1 day in the Department of Corrections. That sentence will be followed by 2 years of parole. This is not a serious violent offense as defined by New Mexico statutes. The defendant will not be allowed to serve his time on an ankle monitor. He will be required to serve his time in the Department of Corrections. He will have the parole conditions as he comes out to include the $100 DNA fee and biological specimen that I've referred to previously. I am going to ask that the defendant be taken into custody at this time and remain in the Curry County Adult Detention Center until the sheriff transports him to the Department of Corrections. The defendant will be entitled to 5 days of pre-sentence confinement credit and post-sentence confinement credit until he is delivered to the Department of Corrections. I do wish you luck, Mr. Chavez-Molina, and I know that you will have this time in the Department of Corrections to continue to consider the impact of your actions. Now, counsel will go over the judgment and sentence immediately upon concluding this hearing, so if you'll please stay. But Ms. Reed, was there anything further that needed to come before this court?
No, Your Honor.
And Ms. Baca, anything further?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, I want to thank you, Ms. Poblete, for your great assistance today interpreting,